Hello and welcome to Tales for Life. In each episode of this podcast, we'll explore a folk or fairy tale from a different culture or region and discover the life lessons, values, and morals they offer that we can use today. Join me on the journey through the magical and meaningful world of folk and fairy tales. Welcome back to another episode of the Tales for Life podcast. I'm glad you're joining me today for another look at life through the lens of folk and fairy tales. Today's episode features a fun tale from Germany and is titled, The Cream Rises to the Top. For those not familiar with the origin of the saying, this refers, quite literally, to the process of making cream from milk. Cream, which is full of fat, is lighter than the milk it comes from and rises to the top. And since we all love what is tasty, which is fat, the process became a metaphor for life in that those things or people that are the best or most desirable will make their way to the top. By and large, this still holds true. We see it most obviously in professional sports, but it's in schools, business, and even among friends and family. We all know who the go-to person is for certain things. When it comes to friends and family, we might not be rewarding those folks with lavish paychecks or bonuses, but they sure do get our respect and trust. One funny thing about cream is that unless something happens to the milk, sitting around in the olden days or spun out of it today, the cream stays put. And if the milk is cooled right away or consumed right away, the cream never rises to the top. But when there's an outside force applied, up comes the cream. It's the same with people. Sometimes you just don't realize how good someone is until they're put to the test or challenged. Before all the modern conveniences we have today, challenges were a part of life. As a result, tales abound on the subject of those who prove themselves in adverse circumstances. One fun one, and in some versions a little risque, comes from old Germany and was written down more than 150 years ago. It's titled, The Rabbit Herd. A king who had a beautiful daughter had an unusual idea. He proclaimed throughout the entire land that whoever could bring him a green fig at Christmas time should receive the princess to wife. Now there was a country dweller who had 3 sons. The oldest was a cobbler, the second a tailor, but the third one had no trade at all. He was nothing but a kitchen guy. One day around Christmas time, the boy's father found a tree in the woods with 3 green figs. He took them home, put one of them in a little basket, and said to his oldest son, "Put your best clothes on and take this fig to the king." The boy dressed up smartly and set forth. Coming into a great forest, he met a little old man who asked him, "What do you have in your basket?" "What am I supposed to have in it? It's dung," said the cobbler. "So," replied the little man, "if it is dung, then let it be dung." The lad continued on his way, finally arriving at the royal palace. The guard asked him what he wanted. "I'm bringing a green fig to the king," he said. They let him enter. When he stepped before the king and gave him the basket, it turned out to be just as the little man had said. They gave him a good beating and sent him on his way. Back at home, he said that his mission had been unsuccessful, but he did not admit what had actually happened. Then the tailor said, "You must have done something stupid. I will be more clever if father will send me with another fig." The father gave his permission and put another fig in a basket for him. In the woods, the same thing happened to the tailor. He answered the little old man even more rudely, and at the palace received an even harder beating than his brother had. Back at home, he did not admit why he too had failed. Now the Cinder Lad wanted to try his luck with the third fig. His brothers said, "You stupid devil, the guards will never let you in." The youth did not give his father any peace until he allowed him to try his luck with the third fig. He too met the little man in the woods. When he was asked what was in his basket, he said, honestly and politely, "A green fig that I am taking to the king." "Now, my son," said the little man, "if you have a green fig, then let it remain a green fig. And because you are such an honest fellow, I want to give you something. Here is a little flute. If you play on it, everything that you want will come to you." Thanking the little man, the lad put the flute in his pocket and continued on to the royal palace. After a little difficulty, he gained entrance. He gave the king the basket, and behold, the fig was still a fig. However, the princess was not happy about marrying the lad. She said, "I will marry you only under one condition. You must let the 100 hares that are in the stall graze in the woods for 8 days without losing a single one." He accepted the task, and his little flute made it possible for him to bring all 100 back home on the first evening. Then the princess thought, "I must be clever about this." The next day she disguised herself and went into the woods where he was herding. "Will you sell me a hare?" "I won't sell you one," he said, "but you can earn one from me." "How?" she asked. "The donkey that you're riding. Just kiss its behind," he said. "I'd rather do that than to marry this peasant," she thought, and did what he had demanded. He gave her a hare. When she had gone a little way, he blew on his flute. The hare immediately freed itself and returned to its herder. Thus, on the second evening, he again returned with all 100 hares. The next day, the queen came out in disguise, and the same thing happened to her. On the fourth day, the king tried his luck, but he fared no better. At the end of 8 days, the youth thought that he had now earned the hand of the princess. But the king insisted on yet another task. "You must," he said, "bring me 3 sacks filled with truths." The lad asked for time to think things through, left the palace, and went out into the woods. No solution came to him, and he was about ready to give up all hope when the little man came to him and asked why he was so sad. After hearing the lad's response, the little man said, "Oh, that's nothing. Just tell them how you traded away the hares." So the lad returned to the palace and said, "I have what you asked for." "Let us hear," said the king. "When I was herding the hares," began the youth, "on the second day the princess came to me and wanted a hare. But she didn't get one until she had kissed the donkey's butt." "Stop!" shouted the king. "1 sack is full." The next day, the queen came to me and wanted— "Stop!" shouted the king. "The 2nd sack is full." On the following day, said the lad, "Stop!" shouted the king. "The 3rd sack is full." The lad and the princess were married, and the wedding was celebrated for 14 days. Such a grand time was had by all that the person who told this story wishes that he had been a guest there as well. Before leaving this story, at least in this episode, there are a few points I'd like to emphasize that we'd all do well to keep in mind each day. For starters, being the cream of the crop, or the cream that rises to the top, is not something limited to a certain few. It's not dependent on how good you look, how much money you make, or even what you do for a living. And that means that anyone can rise to the occasion. Or, as in the case of the king, queen, and princess, you can prove yourself to be not so creamy when the time to test who you are comes. You have the choice of whether or not you will be milk or cream. Which leads to the next important point. Whether you are milk or cream shows in your character. Like the previous episode, always worth a listen if you haven't heard it, or a re-listen if you have, your character will guide you in your choices, and those, if they are the right ones, will prompt others to help you rise to the top. That is, with the right character, others will be happy to be the milk on which you, the cream, will rise. I'll end with one last point, which might be the most important of all. If you are cream, if you are that person of character and principle that others count on or go to, the only person who can make you sink is yourself. No one, not even the king, could take one of the lad's rabbits, and every time as the lad played the flute, the rabbit returned. Your inner being, who you truly are, can never be taken away. Are you milk or cream? Do you rise to the occasion, or do you find yourself settling at the bottom? Perhaps you're still in the milk, patiently waiting for your moment to rise. If you stick to who you are, that time will come, and one day you'll find yourself not on the bottom or in the middle, but on top. And I hope to see you there.